Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are here to do a Night of Champions reaction video, which took place on June 28th, 2025, in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Yeah, on paper, this PLE looks pretty good. Let's get right into the opening match, see if it lives up to the expectations of what we discussed in the predictions video. The kickoff match is the King of the Ring finals with Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes. This was a very slow burn match, and the crowd definitely behind Randy Orton for the entire evening and weekend. Cody Rhodes kicked out of two RKO's, and in an attempt to finish the match, Randy took off the top turnbuckle after fighting his inner voices, if you will, and avoiding a punt for a bit. And then when he finally went for it, it was too little, too late. And yeah, the turnbuckle finish ended up backfiring as it so often does, and provides Cody with the opportunity to throw him into the unprotected corner of the ring, and what I feel like was a bit anticlimactic finish to the King of the Ring, as it only took one Crossroads to beat Randy Orton. KP, what were your thoughts on this match and rating?
The match itself was good. Like I enjoyed it for the majority of the time it went on. I don't really have a problem with Cody Rhodes winning the King of the Ring tournament because I think, like we said in our predictions video, it makes sense for both men to win this match and to be in this position because of the history with Cena, because of what's going on recently. Yeah, both were sensible options to have in this particular match. I don't have an issue with Cody Rhodes winning, but I have an issue with the finish. I just don't really rate how they went about it. I know you've obviously alluded to the exposed turnbuckle and Randy going into it, but like, why is Randy going and grabbing a chair? Why is he exposing the turnbuckle? Like, I've seen like things saying like, oh, he's prepared to do whatever it takes to win King of the Ring to get back to John Cena. Yeah, he said that, but like, I don't know. I just didn't buy it. Like with Randy's current character, with who he is right now, this isn't Randy from like like 20 years ago. This isn't that Orton, or well, 15 years ago, whatever. So I don't really think that this was the right play here. If they were going to do something like this, they literally had Randy with a bad back. They could have done something where, I don't know, he like he further injures his back. Like, he really is sort of like beaten down to a pulp here. Cody feels kind of bad for it, but he puts him away. That would have been all right, because it would have made sense logically for both characters. But yeah, you said it was anticlimactic. I would agree with that. It did feel very sort of much out of nowhere, and it just felt a bit flat at the end. But yeah, taking nothing away from Cody Rhodes becoming King of the Ring, he'll go into SummerSlam now to face John Cena as things stand. Yeah, obviously you got Punk a little bit later on, hoping to change that. We'll talk about that when we get there. But, obviously the history is there between Cody and Cena, and actually a little bit between Cody and Punk as well. So it sort of does right itself. But yeah, I don't know. Just the finish was a bit lacking for me. Wasn't particularly great. But the match was good. I enjoyed it. I'd probably give the match a 7 out of 10. Had no real sort of like problems with the dynamic for the majority. It's just, yeah, I was just left feeling like I was wanting a bit more at the end, which isn't ideal when you've just gone through a King of the Ring final. But yeah, what did you make of it in terms of like your overall rating, and what did you think, like, about the finish specifically, what I've said? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think, this is definitely not Cody's best match. And I know most of this match's kind of flow is just Randy's style. And and I've never been a huge fan of his. So I think I appreciate what he does in in terms of character work. But in terms of how he works matches, I've just never been a huge fan of it. Especially as he gets older, it obviously becomes more exaggerated to kind of compensate. So yeah, not Cody's best match. I would say arguably probably one of his worst. And yeah, the ending just, and I kind of get it, like the issues you have with Randy's finish, or grabbing the chair and all of that. He had already given him two RKO's, and Cody kicked out of those. And so I guess I kind of get, but then he was fighting to do the punt. So then it's like it was a bit of a mixed bag, kind of all over the place. Um, but yeah, again, no, I had no issues with either guy winning, and I think Cody does make the most sense. It just feels like maybe I think a lot of people expected that match a rematch later. And so how does Randy get back in this? You know, I don't know. But as we said on the predictions video, neither of these guys will have issues getting in if they make it work. It just felt like maybe they were going to pass it over to Orton. But regardless, and another key takeaway for me being that the crown, Cody didn't put the crown on his head. And so maybe we've just gone away with that gimmick. You win the king or queen of the ring and you hold the crown, and that's that. And I'm 100% okay with that because the gimmick itself rarely works, in my opinion. So, I'm okay with that. And overall, 6.5 out of 10. If I didn't already put that out there, but yeah, not the best. Especially you want your king and queen of the ring finals to be something worthwhile, and this just didn't quite feel like that. So let's move on to the next match of the night, which features Rhea Ripley and Raquel Rodriguez in a street fight. So this was way better than I think it should have been, especially without the story going into it. There wasn't really much of it. Of course, Roxy shows up because the Judgment Day is in a match, so you have to have that interference. But outside of allowing Raquel to recover a bit, you could argue didn't help at all. While Rhea gets the win here, and commentary announced this as well. That clearly that Rhea announces after the match that she's moving on to bigger and better things. So clearly this was just merely a stepping stone for Rhea, and we can argue about the match outcome and all of that. But I will say this, and you know that I am a fan of Raquel more than most. I think this was probably one of her better matches on Main, arguably maybe one of the best. The announcing team hit on this as well, so I know at least in terms of what WWE wants us to think. Calling this her coming out party. So I think this was a glimpse of what that character could be, and I think she could definitely be more than just a security presence as she's kind of been for the Judgment Day. And I'd also argue that I think Rhea didn't need the win. I kind of said this on the predictions video, and I kind of said, Rhea losing here doesn't make a big difference in her character arc, and especially if Roxy came down to help, which she should have, and it should have been more of a bigger deal, but she just ended up getting put in a trash can, and that was kind of that. So definitely marked her ineffective and kind of make the Judgment Day as a whole look weak. So I think the wrong person won here. But yeah, curious to hear your thoughts on that, KP. Do you agree on the winner here? I know you did predict Rhea, but do you think there's any truth and source of what I'm putting out here in terms of the outcome? And how did you rate the match overall? I know we had the last woman standing match the night before. This is going to get compared to probably, but how did you rate this one?
So first and foremost, I think to just sort of like nail it on there, I think I would agree that Raquel winning this one would have been a better choice, purely because of the fact that she is trying to come out of her shell. She's been women's tag team champion with Liv Morgan, but it does feel like Liv gets the spotlight, and Raquel is like the one who sort of is, I don't know, her like she's a heavy, and she gets in the mix when she has to, but when it comes to the big matches and the big fights, they're Liv Morgan's opportunities, and they tend to go to her more than anything. So yeah, I think this was a really good match. For both women, I think both women really were winners here, because Rhea Ripley won the contest, but Raquel showed everybody that she can hang with someone like Rhea Ripley, and she can really bring the fire and energy that I think a lot of people would want to see from her. Because let's be honest, when she, her coming back on the main roster has been not a disaster, but I think we haven't really got the full package of Raquel. And yeah, there's obviously been mixes of reasons behind that, being in the tag division and health concerns and whatnot and all that kind of stuff. But I think this is, like you said, this is the sort of like the coming out party for Raquel Rodriguez, and really putting herself on the map to show that she can really deliver a really good matchup. So yeah, I did enjoy this one very, very much so. I gave it an 8 out of 10. No, sorry, I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. I thought the carnage was great. The table spot was quite it was quite interesting. You know, when they were up on stood on there, I thought, you know, with the wobbling situation, I was like, oh my god, this could, you know, the tables could go through. We've seen these tables do that, you know, from time to time, just fall through. But thankfully, it held up. She hit the Riptide, and it was a cool finish. I quite enjoyed it. But yeah, Roxy coming on out and getting just completely just, you know, dismantled in a matter of moments. It yeah, it didn't really do her any favors in this one. I would have liked to have seen Roxy get a little more offense in, maybe make Rhea work a bit more, and then Rhea shows a bit more resiliency coming back. You know, using the adrenaline, using the, I don't know, the crowd to sort of like bring her back into it a little bit later on, and then overcoming both women. That would have been a really cool moment. But yeah, I think that's my only real critique here. But the match was fantastic. Really had a great time watching it, and kudos to both women.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. If Roxanne was going to be, you know, put in the spot that she was, then why bother? You know, I think you could have argued the case that just not having her come out at all, and then Raquel losing the match without any assistance could have then gone to Roxy and been like, "Hey, you know, where were you?" I think that makes a lot more sense than what we got. So I think it's just a matter of, and you know, and at the end of the day, I'm nitpicking here, but I think we have, you know, what was one of the better matches of the night, um, arguably one of the best. You could have had something even better. So I think it's just a decision that didn't kind of set well with me. But regardless, I think Rhea walks out of here looking really well, really good, and I think you know, Raquel does too. I think she makes a point that she can do more than what she's currently doing. Did I give my rating? I'm not sure I did. I gave this one a 7.5 out of 10. Um, yeah, I fought with that one because I was a bit conflicted, as I'm sure you could tell. But yeah, a pretty good match in the grand scheme of things. So we move on to another non-title match at the Night of Champions, and we get Sami Zayn and Karrion Kross. Sami's obviously been fighting those demons with Karrion Kross, and unfortunately for me, as I kind of mentioned on the predictions video, I think this is another instance of a bad booking decision. While the match was pretty good, plenty of back and forth, I do stand by what I said on the predictions video that I think Kross should have gotten the win here. Zayn, like Rhea, does not, you know, lose any momentum from a loss here, in my opinion, as they both are extremely over characters, and a loss to someone who desperately needs a win, it's not the end of the world, especially with someone like Kross struggling to get on TV in the first place. So now that we do see him on a big PLE, him eating the loss here, I just don't think was the right decision, especially when he kind of, you know, took control of most of the match. And then as soon as Kross was doing the jump into Sami in the corner matches, I think, you know, most of us saw what was going to happen. Of course, Zayn does run across the ring and hit that haluva kick, and that's all it took, the one haluva kick to take out Kross. So yeah, it's unfortunate. I love Sami. You know, I think, you know, obviously KP, you love Sami as well. But I'm hard pressed to believe that Kross wasn't the right choice here. So we'll see if Kross can do something else. And it has to be frustrating for him. You know, I think just given the stance of Sami Zayn's character, obviously his background, I think I felt like that would have been another opportunity. I think WWE's decision was, you know, we obviously can't make him lose in the location that we're at, but I think something like Vince would have done, Kross getting the win, taking that momentum from the unquote local hero, would have been a great way to kickstart that momentum. So KP, what are your thoughts here? I know you're a big fan of Sami Zayn. Do you think the WWE made the right call here?
Well, I think I'm in an exclusive club here. I'm probably one of the like 10 people on the planet that think this is a very good decision and the right call. Um, yeah, I think my way of trying to defend this booking decision is that Sami has been regarded by many people on WWE television in the past like month or two as being a future world champion. And the story is that, you know, he is trying to find his way up there. And I think that losing to Karrion Kross here at Night of Champions wouldn't have done him any favors because every time that Sami Zayn is pushed, every time that he gets like a slight little elevation, he's knocked down before he can really get any momentum going and really get into a serious sort of like, you know, streak of matches that he's been winning. So I think that this is a really pivotal moment here. You've got the mental games of Karrion Kross, and they're not going to go away. I don't think this is going to be the last of this for a second. So Kross, we've seen in the past, we've seen his gimmicks. Well, we've seen his feuds before with the likes of AJ Styles, and you know everybody that's come before that. I'm not going to go into it because you know just whatever. But he's always been the guy who gets into someone's face. He doesn't necessarily win the feud, but we see afterwards that these people, they go on different tangents, they change their careers up, and they ultimately become more successful off of the back of that. So this sort of, you know, it joins up quite nicely with Sami's current path. As to where this takes Sami next, I don't know. I don't know exactly where it's going to take him, but this could be the moment that, you know, we look back on and we think this was the match that, you know, made him go from this particular wrestler to the wrestler that we're talking about maybe in like 7 or 8 months time, because of what happened with Kross and because of getting this victory here. So I can probably wager that Kross will go on to Raw on Monday and he will get up in the mind of Sami once again, or at least Sami will be thinking about it. It will play on his mind, and he'll be holding those conversations deep within his mentality that he's had with Karrion Kross up until this moment, and will continue to do so going forward. So for him to have won this match, yes, Kross, I think I would agree personally that he hasn't had much going for him at all, and this was maybe a coming out moment for him on the PLE stage, showing that, you know, he can hang with somebody like Sami Zayn, who, in my opinion, is one of the best at the moment. And that's not a biased stance. That's just a general honesty part of me. But I think that ultimately, when it comes down to Sami Zayn and his selling of Kross, he made Kross look very good in this matchup as well. I think that needs to be brought out here and that needs to be mentioned. Because Kross looked great. He looked fantastic. He was strong. He was dominant. He was focused. And his character work was really coming up and it was flourishing during this matchup. I think Kross did nothing wrong. And I think that Sami Zayn getting the win here was ultimately a really good moment because of Kross's character work. And they allowed each other to build each other up and to go on from here on. I think it's just all positives about this. Maybe I'm the only one looking at it like this, or maybe I'm just overthinking it and I'm trying to sort of like cope with, you know, Sami Zayn, one of my favorites, getting the win. I'm trying to defend that massively. But that's just my take on this one. I enjoyed the matchup. I don't think it was an all-time classic by any means necessary, but I think it was the right call, and that's the most important thing, I think. I gave it a 7 out of 10. Like I said, I think both men did what they needed to do, and I think that going forward, we can look back on this, you know, when the time is right. But for now, we see what happens, and we go from there.
Yeah, you made some good points. You know, I think you could probably argue that both men needed this win. I would just argue that Karrion needed it a little more. However, I'm over here setting, you know, listening to you go on about Sami Zayn. I feel like I'm a child being lectured a little bit. I love the passion that you have for Sami Zayn, and I would agree. I think Sami is one of the best overall complete characters that WWE currently has. And I too wrote a note about the chemistry that these two have and work very well off of each other. Given their difference in styles, that is a testament to both guys, and I think especially Sami Zayn, who can obviously work with anyone. But yeah, I think the biggest issue that I have is, yes, as you mentioned, Karrion Cross's rivalries always end up changing his opponent, and I don't think that will be an exception here. The issue that I have is, well, why would anyone ever listen to Karrion Kross, because he could never win a match? So that's my granted, you know, him winning his next feud and not winning this one. Will that have a huge, you know, impact at the end of the day? No, because then maybe he can continue to win after that. But yeah, there are definitely sides to both stories here, and I think you could probably argue them both. Whoever ended up winning this match, maybe a no DQ was an ideal finish here too as well. You know, but we can just take what we got, and so I give this one a 7 out of 10. And although you mentioned not you know, being one that will be noteworthy, I would argue it's still one of the best matches of the night. So for whatever that's worth. Yeah, let's move on to the next match. We have Solo Sikoa taking on Jacob Fatu for the U.S. Championship. And I think we both felt pretty confident in that Jacob Fatu was not going to lose that U.S. title for quite some time. Well, I imagine we were both quite shocked when he does end up losing the title. Granted, it took the formation of what seemingly feels like a new bloodline to do it. So by no means do I think this loss hurts Fatu. That being said, this match was a bit off for me. The second interference in particular, where the ref was distracted during that entire time, um, was a bit of a head scratcher. I don't, you know, when he came back, when Jacob was put back in the ring, the ref then turned around at that exact instance. Which, again, let's not try to put a bunch of logic into wrestling because that's just a no-win scenario. But that was a long time, and what felt like Jacob was about to go for the cover, you would think the ref was right there. But I don't know. I think that might have been. I think there was, and I think I even maybe saw Solo motion. Um, for the interference to come on and get started. So it maybe just me nitpicking a bit. Um, but that was a hole that I couldn't quite look past. And so, yeah, although unexpected and the match was good enough, um, yeah, I'm happy for Solo. He had to he had quite the path to endure from starting up. What felt like he was going to be one of the next big guys to endure everything he has become. Had to go through to get here is great for him, and I'm happy for Solo. He's been very entertaining as of late, and yeah, I have no idea how Jacob Fatu combats Solo's new bloodline faction. I think he has a lot of work ahead of him if he is going to try to do that. We've obviously seen a storyline similar to this. Does it take as long? Hopefully not. But yeah, Solo winning here, I think not the best match. I think this was more about Solo setting up that new bloodline and Jacob having to not quite be able to take over or combat all of them, which again, no issues with that. But yeah, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this one, KP. Did you feel like this match was a bit sloppy, or did you like this one overall?
Well, first and foremost, I was surprised by the result. Like you said, didn't see it coming. Expected Jacob Fatu to retain. But besides that, no, I thought it was a great matchup. I think the carnage and chaos that happened, that ensued, I thought was really well done. The debuting, I think we're calling him Talatonga. Yeah, I think that was quite out of nothing, and the return of Tongaloa as well was quite a surprise. I didn't expect that. But yeah, Solo Sikoa winning his first single championship in WWE on the main roster. Yeah, like I say, surprises are good. I think that a lot of time that we watch matches now, I tend like, especially with the championship matches, not so much with the non-title ones, but tend to be pretty like easy to figure out who's gonna win. But with this instance, maybe I just missed something, or maybe we both did. But yeah, I think this was really well done, and it was a nice shock. I think Solo's reign's going to be interesting because Jacob Fatu won't be done. This whole thing's going to continue. So yeah, the next stage of this could be quite fascinating, and I'm definitely seated to see where it does take us. But yeah, the match was fun. I think besides the chaos and just Jacob Fatu looking like an absolute beast as usual, I think it did what it needed to do. I gave NA out of 10. And yeah, I think just the general sort of like story elements to it. You'll see the throwbacks to their recent sort of struggles with one another. Solo got up in the face of Jacob Fatu quite a lot, and obviously was hitting his soundboard, saying all of his famous quotes and lines that he's saying right now. Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like the mentality was there, the chemistry was there, and both men really built the moment up to be quite shocking and quite I don't know, bigger than what I thought it was going to be, this matchup for sure. So yeah, was a fan of it. I gave an 8 out of 10. And yeah, I'm interested to see where Solo takes the US title from here. I thought Fatu did a great job with it in the limited time that he had with it. So yeah, I'm keen. Let's see what happens from here out.
I think it's rare that we come up with a big point difference, but I gave this one a 6.5 out of 10. For me, I just felt like Fatu's reign was it was too short. even given all the things that happened here tonight. Oh, obviously that were surprising and was a moment, but um, to me it just feels like it was a surprise, yes, but in the grand scheme of things, really was it? Because how many times have we seen seemingly this story? So I don't know. Maybe I'm just tired of bloodline things. I don't know. Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I just need to rewatch this one. I, I I felt like the shock factor wasn't one that I was expecting, which is the definition of a shock factor, I suppose. But I don't know. I really had high hopes. Jacob is taking this title belt on just like a massive run, and just felt like it was cut short for a new bloodline that is obviously going to be compared to the last bloodline, and is I would safely say it's probably going to pale in comparison. So yeah, we'll give it a shot. We'll see how it goes. But for me, that's enough ranting. Let's move on to the next match, the Queen of the Ring finals, which features Jade Cargill and Asuka. Versus the Queen of the Ring finals, which features Jade Cargill and Asuka. As we've seen, I guess we'll just continue on with the bit of a disappointment trend that I seem to be going on. And I feel like with 6 matches on the card, I felt like that was always going to be an issue. Some match was going to get cut short. And unfortunately, I do believe that that was this one. Now, if this was just a way to protect Jade, obviously we've hit on this many times. I think she still has work to do in the ring, but I think is making improvements. So if that was the logic behind that, then fine. I just felt like with Asuka in there, obviously you couldn't do too much wrong. I think Asuka can certainly help aid anyone who needs it. So yeah, I will say that I think this could have been a much longer match, and there was really no reason that it wasn't, in my opinion. So, but yeah, in terms of the match itself, I thought it was pretty good, and I think absolutely Jade's best match since coming to WWE. And obviously, that doesn't hurt to have Asuka on the other side of the ring. But I feel like the extreme size differences here, for whatever reason, it just hasn't been that apparent, but absolutely was during this match. I feel like that does have to be a little difficult for Jade. I think we saw it. The only really issue that I saw was the finish. I think she kind of struggled to turn her around for the pin, and maybe that was because of the size difference and her not being used to it. Um, but I think that was the one moment that I think I noticed any sort of issues with Jade. So, but yeah, as you kind of mentioned on the predictions video, this is the moment for Jade. So I think this is her chance to make a run for it. And so um, if this doesn't work out, I have a hard time believing she's going to continue to get opportunities. So beating Asuka is a great way to start, as obviously the other competitors who did as well to get here. And yeah, I'm curious to see if she can avoid the Naomi cash in. Obviously, that's the elephant in the room. But has her sights for now set on Tiffany for SummerSlam. So regardless, should be interesting to run to see where we go here. KP, what did you think of this Queen of the Ring finals?
I liked the match for the most of it. I thought it was good. I think that Jade Cargill, like you said, probably had one of the better matches, in WWE at the moment. I think as a single star, she really has grown, and to be able to sort of like go one on one with one of the greatest, being Asuka, I think that's a testament to how she sort of has developed, in her time in the company now. And yeah, I think she's got the ball. She's allowed to roll with it now, and becoming the Queen of the Ring off the back of that is a great start for her. There's obviously pushes her forward to SummerSlam, and like you said, Tiffany Stratton is on the horizon, but Naomi is lurking in the shadows, and that just writes itself, right? I think we can look to that, and it's just a matter of how it's all going to play out and how exactly it is going to go down. But it made a lot of sense when we were building this one up in the predictions video. Jade Cargill winning because of that Naomi, distraction and focus. It made a lot of sense for Jade to beat Asuka. But yeah, I think my only real criticism is that finish with the pin, and yeah, Jade rolling over as she does with the Jaded. But I mean, I would love to see a reverse angle because I'm pretty sure Asuka's shoulders weren't down, and we saw what happened last year for the King of the Ring final. and Randy Orton's shoulder wasn't down. They made that abundantly clear, and they ran that match back with Gunter when he won the world title. So, yeah, I don't know if they can keep doing that, but it's just like a weird coincidence that if the shoulders were up, which I'm pretty convinced they were, that it happened, in another King/Queen of the Ring final. So, yeah, I don't know, just an unfortunate bit of bad luck there. That's all it really was. Nothing really too big to take from that, but I find it quite, quite ironic that it happened, at a similar, on basically the same event, but a year later on. But no, it was a good match. Yeah, Jade is coming into her own. She has grown a lot, and this is this is her journey to be in that main event picture, which I think she's been wanting for a while. We all expected her to get into that, and now we're about to witness it finally happen. So SummerSlam, Jade will be there, but how will that dynamic play out with Tiff, with Naomi? We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, good match from both women. Shame about Asuka losing. That would have been my preferred option, but I got no complaints regarding this one with Jade winning, because I think she's put in the work, and now she's getting her just desserts for that. I gave this one a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. And as far as attire of the night, I think that absolutely has to be given to Jade as well. If you are a fan of superhero stuff, X-Men stuff, this was the Storm cosplay 100%. And if you are a fan of X-Men like I am, obviously that was a great moment. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I think Asuka obviously will be fine. I think we kind of mentioned that on the predictions video. I think she can certainly find her way to EO still, if that is something we want to run, and it is. At least I am speaking on behalf of myself and KP. We do want to see that. So yes, let's see if we can find a way to get that to work. And I think that will be just fine. Let's move on to the main event, which has CM Punk going up against John Cena for the WWE Undisputed Championship. KP and I think KP actually is the one that said this, but we're curious to see how this match would go. I was on the side of there's no way this is going to be better than the promos they've been dropping, and KP was on the side of let's see what CM Punk can do without being carried by his opponent. Obviously, Cena not at his point in his career, maybe even ever, was going to be the person to carry CM Punk. So I will say this though, for the match, I think this is probably one of the better Punk matches that we've seen from him. He's still gassed pretty quickly. I think that much is obvious. But I feel like this was one of his better matches since coming back. And I will say the best match of Cena's current run, for me anyways. But yeah, that really isn't the talking point here, is it? We yet again see Seth and his faction causing mass mayhem. Then we see Penta and Sami Zayn come in to null the distractions. Rollins then takes out Punk after it appeared that Punk and Cena were going, joining forces for the greater good. Then we see that look on Cena's face as he's hugging Punk, which is, I don't know, that's a choice, not one that I love, but regardless. And then Cena throws out Rollins after Rollins gives a stomp to Punk, and then pins Punk to retain his title. This is a booking I felt like we've seen a couple times before. I think that's safe to say. Do I think this is necessary with the two guys in the ring? Yes, because otherwise, I think this match would have had us walking away with who cares kind of thing. But they got to do something else. I feel like eventually they've done this one a little too much. I don't know what they need to do, but they need to do something a little different. I feel like we've seen this quite a few times, and it hasn't been that long. What has it been? 2 months now since Mania. So Cena's interference angles are what they are, I suppose, and the DQ stuff. This was. I think it's safe to say I think this was a bit overbooked. But KP, what were your thoughts on this main event?
There is a lot of breakdown when it comes to this one. Yeah, we were. dubious as to how this one was going to play out when we were going into our predictions, and I can, understand fully why we were in that sort of mindset. I think it was a lot of fun. I really did enjoy this one. I think the opening like 2/3 of the matchup, I want to like split it. I think 2/3 with just Cena and Punk. I think that was fine. Like, I didn't really see any real issues there. It might have been a little slow in parts, but for the majority, I think that they seem to gel pretty well together. They always have done, and they still can do that now. In 2025, at the tail end of their careers, I think that they did. It wasn't a technical masterpiece, but they sort of threw a little bit of homage to their previous encounters, and really getting up in the face of one another. I think we saw a lot of sort of like improvised technical pieces from both men really in this one. Maybe like delving deeper down into their wells to sort of like try and make things a bit more interesting, try and mix things up. I think there were you can't wrestle chants at one point, but I think that they did pretty well to stop that, and obviously they were aimed at Cena more so than Punk. But no, I think that both men really had a great showing here in those opening 2/3. The 3 attitude adjustments with Punk kicking out of all 3 of them. I'll just gloss over that quickly. We have mentioned before in previous podcasts about Punk kicking out of a lot of big moves consistently over and over and over again, and that happened here in this one as well. There seems to be a Punk staple since his return. I think 3 AAs is a little much in my opinion. Let's say there's only so many times you can kick out of a finisher before it no longer really is seen as a finisher. It has to be done in a particular way. It has to be done like off the ropes, or it has to be done onto a weapon, or straight after a weapon's been used, or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. That's maybe my main critique from the first 2/3. Going into a completely different part of the match, the final third with Seth Rollins, Big Bronson Reed, Bron Breakker, Paul Heyman, and then you've got Sami Zayn, you got Penta. There was a whole lot to digest, but I think that they had to do this. If you had the last third, like you said, with just Cena and Punk, probably no one would have really cared, and no one would have really spoke about it. But the way they went about it, I think was pretty clever, was pretty smart, because not only did they sort of give these two a break, to be ready for the finish, but it allowed the attention to be taken off of them for the moment, and then to have like Seth and his gang be involved, and obviously they be put down a peg with the help of Sami Zayn and Penta. That obviously would deal with Bron Breakker, 2 men for 1, and then obviously John Cena dealing with Bronson Reed, hitting that big AA. He's still got the strength and the power in his arsenal to lift that big guy up and to slam him down. That was pretty impressive, even for John Cena. At this stage of his career, showing that that longevity. And then Punk, getting taken out of the contest really by Seth Rollins right at the very death. The cash-in fail was quite great, with Robinson doing his throwback, running down the ramp, famously did at WrestleMania all those years ago, getting bodied by John Cena. And then, obviously, like I said, Seth taking out Punk, hitting the stomp after slamming the contract against his head. And then you've got John Cena throwing Seth out the ring to go for a cover, just desperation. I think it just worked out really, really well. They didn't need to overcomplicate things here. I don't think they did that. There was a lot to digest. Sure, there were a lot of people involved. But in terms of overcomplicating things, I don't think that really happened here. It made sense, it was logical, and it took spotlight away from them for a moment, continued another story, allowed Seth and Punk to take their next step, to remove Punk from the situation between him and John Cena, to have him go on to something, I say different, to have him go on from Cena now, to go back to Seth, and now Cena goes obviously on to SummerSlam to take on Cody Rhodes. I just think that it was clever. It worked. It ticked all the boxes, and that's what we had to do. It wasn't like the greatest match you'll ever see by any means necessary, but it was still good for this part of what we're watching right here, right now, with John Cena, his 17th run as champion in his last year. Yeah, I think this was fine, and it was an enjoyable watch. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Like I said, so much going on, but I don't think it really sort of took anything away from what we needed to have happen here. But yeah, I think I basically covered everything there, and yeah, I was a fan. Cena retains, and yeah, was a good end to the show.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, I think the interference is necessary. I just feel like rinse and repeat. I feel like a bit. Granted, this was a little different, as you kind of alluded to. Um, but yeah, yeah, and like I said, I feel like Punk and Cena. This was better showing of the two of them. Um, I think that's safe to say. And so now we wait for Cena and Rhodes, and then the inevitable interference with Rollins on that, and we can rinse and repeat that again, I suppose. I think for me, it's just Penta and Zayn getting in. I think that's like we've seen the interference and then come off, get cut off. We've seen now like almost a weekly basis now, it feels like. So I think that's what, like, I wanted something a little different for the PLE. And so I think that's kind of where my head's at. But yeah, this is, everything served a purpose in the end. And um I don't know why I wasn't expecting it. I guess I just wasn't. But him running down to the ring and just getting manhandled by Cena, that was quite the bump. But in the end, I think Cena winning here to get that rematch against Rhodes, I think will be entertaining. And we'll have to wait and see how Rollins factors into that. I give this one a 7 out of 10. Um, it's rare that my ratings are lower than yours, but that I feel like that has been pretty much across the board. But speaking of ratings, KP, give us your overall feelings on Night of Champions and rating as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I went into this event not like insanely hyped for it, but acknowledged that there could have been really good moments across the card. I think that I allowed myself to enjoy it a lot more, maybe because of that reason. I think the highlights for me across the show are probably the Rhea Ripley and Raquel Rodriguez street fight. I think Solo Sikoa winning the United States Championship was a surprising moment I quite enjoyed. And then obviously John Cena retaining the WWE Championship. I think, the way it happened, the way it went down, I have nothing really against that. And Sami Zayn winning is always going to be something that I'm going to cherish, whether or not we agree that's the correct call. So I gave the overall event a 7.5 out of 10. I don't think it was like a completely top tier event that we'll probably talk about, in years to come. But I think that when it comes down to what we witnessed throughout the show, seeing the coming of age of Raquel Rodriguez and Jade Cargill in their respective rights, and the opportunities that this show has presented itself and has opened up, the direction that we're taking, I think that there were a lot of steps in the right direction here. Whether or not the finishes or the results were quite correct, in some of the cases, obviously we could argue that. But I think, yeah, for the most part, I did a great job, and I did really enjoy it. So yeah, 7.5 out of 10. Better than what I thought it was going to be, which is always a pleasant surprise. What about you though? My ratings have been obviously quite higher than yours, but what's your overall?
Yeah, and it's rare. Usually I'm on the other side of it. I'm usually much higher. But I think, sitting here listening to you explain your reasonings, I think the majority of the reasons why I didn't rate it as highly is just and good thing we don't do like a belt or a predictions contest, because I would have gotten wiped off. The floor had been wiped with me on this one. I just felt like every match that had the opportunity to do something better and bigger, and it went the opposite direction, at least in my head. So I felt like that was kind of my reasoning. So maybe, and I feel like I usually am not the person that lets my favoritism play a part, but I feel like somehow it did here. And for whatever reason, that just didn't set well with me. So I give this one, after all that going on, about 7 out of 10. So a half a point lower than yours overall. But I think I had higher expectations for it given the card that we got. So it is what it is. It wasn't one that I will come back and watch a bunch, but it also wasn't one that I will think of poorly in the grand scheme of things, and think, oh, that was just a terrible PLE. It just had some outcomes I didn't quite agree with. So with that, we move on. We don't get a lot of time to recover. We have main event and Evolution. 2 weeks from yesterday, Saturday. So yeah, not much time to move on. So, but we will do our best, and we will of course be back this week with a Raw, NXT, and SmackDown recap. But until then, this has been The Push with Nick and KP, and we'll see you next time. Take care.